This world is a muddied one, however, there are two things that are clear to. They are Yuruma-shun. They are good and evil. 13-year-old Yuruma-shun was getting bitten by a group of kids. They threw him upside down, ran over him with their bikes, kicked him in the stomach, and shot him with the bullet guns, all the while acting as if they were defeating a monster in children's game. He finally cried out that it was fine already about today's experiment. However, a boy replies no, not yet, and grabs both of Shun's wrists and crosses them over his neck, choking him in the process. He gasps out that it hurts, but the children behind him smile with glee. Kuga Daichai is a bulky kid amongst them, and he says that it is as expected. Ashiro Yuuga gleefully says that his face is bright red as he sits on his bike. Madoka Hiro adds to the excitement. Senkuji tells him that he is getting too excited. And with the 12-year-old kids is Shigoku Kaiou, who is currently choking Shun. Daichai says that he must have seen that in the dojo. Kaiou says that he did. He replies that it is the technique to end one's life. Daichai hypes others as if that is the most coolest thing. He says that Kaiou-chan is even more amazing than the adults in the dojo after all. Kaiou continues that if they tighten it here he will die. Shun chokes in his grip, thinking that he really will die. Soon after he became a 5th grader, he started being bullied by these 5. He does not understand why they did it. It just suddenly happened. Yuuga tells Kaiou that this guy soiled his own pants. Kaiou looks behind him and finds Shun's pants wet. He immediately gets up. He states that he was just about to kill him for real. Shun fearfully wonders that he really intends to kill him. The boys take their bag and leave him there, calling him test subject as they leave. Lab Rata is the nickname those guys call him. They are likening bullying as an experiment. Shun thinks he truly can't understand them. He stops on the way back home and looks in the mirror. He takes a dip in the river. Coming out, he tears that he really can't understand them. That is when he heard a small mew. He looks behind him and smiles when he sees a small kitten in the box looking at him. He tells his mom and dad that he is home as soon as he passes the gate. His parents are gardening. His mom calls out to him and his father instantly asks why is he soaked when he notices Shun's wet clothes. Shun only answers that he was playing at the river. He runs inside his home and calls to his little brother Kakeru. A 6-year-old Yuruma Kakeru looks up at him with sparkling eyes. He points out that his big brother is soaked as Shun puts down his bag. He shakes his head violently to get himself to dry quickly, resembling a dog. Kakeru exclaims that it is cold. Shun continues that he found a little kitten. He brings Kakeru to the spot where the kitten was and sees as he plays with the small fur ball. Kakeru adorably says that it is so cute. He says that they can't bring it home. Shun suggests that they keep it here. He puts his index finger against his lips in a shushing motion and says that it is going to be a little secret between them. Kakeru repeats that this will be their secret and says that it is kind of exciting somehow. Then he asks the kitten what should he call it. But suddenly he turns to Shun and asks him what is that mark on his neck. Shun tenses in shock as he quickly covers the marks from earlier. He playfully turns away and claims that he was playing wrestling at school. He says that he was caught in a strangle attack but he won at the end. Kakeru believes him for the time being and Shun sighs in relief. The only thing that calms his heart. He thinks no matter how hard it is, he will keep up this lie. He looks at his little brother and decides that he can't let him know. To save the smile of his younger brother. Unbeknownst to him, the 2 bullies from earlier were watching him from the side. Late Shun finds a letter on the table that was addressed to him and reads that they are going out to buy something, leaving a crab stick. Shun runs to the bridge and he can feed him with this. He wonders if the cat will eat it. However, he finds that the box is not there, but behind him he finds a familiar shrewd group standing. Kaiou calls him test subject and tells him to come with them. They take him to the woods and Kaiou states that they left the kitten on this mountain. Shun looks at him in shock. Kaiou comes closer to Shun and tells him that there are boars and foxes here and if he does not find it quickly, he wonders if it will get eaten. Shun quickly dashes inside the forest with tears pulling in his eyes. Daichai mutters that he went in. Hiro asks Kaiou why did he started bullying Yuruma. Kaiou asks if he does not like it. Hiro quickly claims that he is not saying that he does like it. He says that they are following Kaiou-chan because it is fun for them too. But he says that he has not heard of any reason why he is picking on him, that is all. Kaiou asks that for a person what he thinks the most amazing thing they can do is. The answers came in various things like leading a biker gang, a gold medal, going to space, and being filthy rich. Kaiou states that no, the answer is to kill a person. Hiro asks if it is murder. But Kaiou says that no, it is not simply murder. To kill for someone's sake. To kill for oneself, kill for love, there is always a reason. A person who kills for no reason, he says that he will be the first. A person who grew up in a loving and welcoming family blessed with friends. No reason, no desire, a killer like that. Killing someone either directly or indirectly. His friends watch him in awe. He says that now that it is decided. First, for a weak person like him, trying to kill him indirectly, would it be risky or not? This is that kind of experiment. For test subject A, how far must he be driven until he kills himself? In the woods, Shun reaches the box that holds the kitten, but now was dripping with blood. He cries as Kaiou's friends watch him in amazement on the other side of the forest. Shun is sobbing as he walks back from the forest. He cries that those guys are too mean, even though they haven't even given it a name yet. He exclaims that, how could they do such a thing? Shun just wanted to see his mom, dad, and Kakeru. But suddenly a bird flies and startles him. He looks around and thinks, where is this place? He looks behind and squeaks, falling to the ground. He finds an old-looking man with a scar on his face and a rifle in his hands. He realizes that it is just his Gramps. The man notices Shun looking at him and replies that this is a hunting gun, and he is just out looking for boars. He kneels in front of Shun and asks if he is lost. When Shun affirms him, he tells Shun that it is not good for him to be out here and he will take him home. Later he drops Shun to his mom. Gramps is from his father's side of the family. Gramps is living by himself, so his family lives nearby to watch over his health, or so it seems. His mother yells, asking him why he was with Gramps just now, and didn't she tell him not to go near him? Shun apologizes to her. He and Kakeru are not allowed to see Gramps. Even when they ask their dad why, he would not tell them anything. He later shuts himself in his room and cries alone, thinking about the cat. But Kakeru comes into his room and asks him what is wrong. But Shun says that it is nothing. Shun thinks he can't look at Kakeru's face while tearing up like this. His brother suddenly wrapped his arms around him. He tells Shun that he has always been trying hard. Shun tears up as his brother continues that Shun has always been trying hard for his sake. That was the last stroke, and both brothers burst into tears. That day he finally told his family about being bullied and was comforted by them. He did not speak of their names since he didn't want to receive a half-hearted apology. Then, his parents moved quickly and he was transferred to another school, and now it has been 1 month since he stopped going to that school. A few days later, his mother told him that they were going to pick up his dad. Kakeru was by her side as she told Shun to take care on his way to the groceries. Kakeru also waves him back. When he was getting back from groceries, his old bullies stopped him on his way and said that they had not seen him at school lately. Sen says that they know. The boy beside him says that his mom usually goes to pick up his dad around this hour. Shun looks at them warily. Daichai hands him his phone and says that it is from Kaiou. Shun puts the phone close to his ears. Kaiou states that running away in the middle of the experiment is unforgivable. He says that the mountain pass that test subject A's parents always go through. He states that he thinks it would not be weird even if there was an accident. Kaiou cuts the call and tells Hiro, who is standing beside him, that they will probably have to end the experiment after this. Although, the order of what he wanted to do was reversed. They are standing on the edge of the mountains where the view of the road is quite clear. Hiro yells for Kaiou to look and says that his parents' car is coming and asks what is he going to do. Kaiou, still with his nonchalant expression, pouches Hiro off the cliff. He drops right in front of the car and Shun's mother swirls to the side. Hiro sees Kaiou happily running towards the smoking car that fell off the cliff. He exclaims that it worked and Hiro smiles. Kakeru wakes up in the car and tries to move his seatbelt. He calls out to his mom and dad, but there is no response. He suddenly finds himself face to face with Kaiou, who has a rock in his hand. He hits Kakeru with that rock hard in the head, again and again, as he groans in pain. Later he climbs up the hill and lights the car on fire. He tells Hiro that looks like it has begun the accident. After that, Shun was told by the medics that it looked like they had managed to save his younger brother, but he suffered serious burns and injuries, but he might not even be able to wake up for the rest of his life. He looks at his brother through the glass. He is fully bandaged with an oxygen mask to help him breathe. His voice echoes in his mind as he questions what would Big Bro do if he were alone. He remembered a time when Kakeru told him that he had drawn a picture of him and said that Big Bro's painting was hard. His father told him that he did a good job and his parents were happy. He dreadfully wonders if he should die too. But a man approaches him and says that he is his father's brother. He asks him if from here on out, does he have a place to stay. The man suggests that he should stay with them if he does not. The lady behind him says that it is a bit far, but she thinks it would be good. But Shun absently says that he has a place to go. He has a place to stay. Later he approaches his grandfather with all of his luggage and thanks him for letting him stay. His grandfather pats him on the head and says that he gets lonely staying here anyway. so it is good to have Shun here. It starts raining that night. Shun remembers the last time he met his grandfather he stopped to put his rifle away in the warehouse. He finds the exact warehouse and opens the door with the key he picked up from the entrance. He finds the cupboard where his grandfather placed his rifle. He takes the rifle in his hands and suddenly lightning strikes and light fills the room. He gazes at what appears to be a frame of military combatants. His grandfather sees him holding his rifle and asks what is he doing. Shun flinches when his grandfather asks him what he intends to do with it. He tries to take the rifle but Shun instantly moves out of the way. The elderly tells him to give it back but Shun refuses. He mutters as if promising his dad, mom, and Kakeru that he will kill those bastards. He yells that he will kill them all. His grandfather asks him if it is true that they were killed. Shun confesses that those fuckers told him their plans. His grandfather immediately suggests the police, but Shun yells that he will not tell them. He holds the rifle as if his life depended on it as tears fall down his cheek. He claims that he will not let anyone take this revenge away from him. His grandfather tells him that if he were to kill them, he would use a knife or anything else. He asks Shun if he is so hopeless that he would have to use that. Shun replies that he is not. However, his grandfather takes the rifle and tells him that with that thing, he would be caught by the police before being able to kill anyone. Besides, if it is the current him, the guilt of killing them would haunt him for the rest of his life even if it is to avenge his family. He wonders where is the thrill in that. Shun looks at his grandfather hopelessly. His grandpa states that Cure Sanchifu's 100th Special Squadron, also known as the Kitayama Corps, were a Japanese Secret Service unit established in the Second World War. He says that during his time there, ways of killing people were thoroughly drilled into him. He turns to Shun and says that he shall train him to certainly give them the suffering they deserve and exact his revenge. Shun knows that his Gramps' words were no lies and he is convinced that is the case because their eyes are the exact same. He remembered how Kyowu looked at him. 4 years later, Shun thinks that in this mudded world, the person who drifted around not knowing what he was no longer exists good and then Shun has become something determined. He tells his grandfather he is going out as he opens his umbrella to cover himself from the rain. Vengeance rises on the shores of good and evil. Last time 6th grader Yuruma Shun lived happily together with his loving parents and little brother. That is, until a group of 5 classmates massacred his entire family. He was taken in by his grandfather, who had been part of the Kitayama troops, a secret organization in the Imperial Japanese Army for 4 years, and he became the personification of revenge organization in the Imperial Japanese. Mizaki High, it is a naturally colorful school commute, unchanging despite the passage of time. The elegant school building. Participation in club activities is non-mandatory, because the school tradition places importance on, takes pride in respecting the students' autonomy. Azuma Chizuru thinks that she loves this school. She thinks in her mind to please let her be like the heroine in the morning drama. But a bag suddenly hits the back of her head as her friend bids her good morning. She rubs the back of her head and bids her back and grumbles, thanking Moan for ruining her good mood. Moan heard her saying that she was in a good mood and asked if she had got a boyfriend or something. Azuma gets up from her seat and exclaims that of course not. Her friend Moan boldly says that she knows that and says that it is still too early for Chizuru. Another friend approaches them and asks what is going on. She comments that Azuma is energetic this morning. Moan tells her that Chizuru says she wants a boyfriend. Her friend commented that if she is not careful, she will get attacked by a suspicious guy. Moan says that apparently there are some lately around 2 meters tall. Azuma states that is too big. Then she gets back and yells that she never said that. Her friend asks if she does not want a boyfriend. Azuma shies and says that that is not it. Her friends run away and squeal that they will talk about this again at the next break. She exclaims for them to wait, but they do not listen to her. Even while Chizuru's teachers are teaching, her mind is still hung up on the boy talk she had earlier with her friends. During middle school, she was always absorbed in club activities, so she has never once thought about it. Something like that, though for her, who has never confessed to anyone before, it is dubious as to whether she will be able to have a proper romance. She stretches on her seat, and suddenly the teacher calls out to Yuruma, who looks like he just woke up from his sleep. The teacher immediately scolds him and says that how many times does that make? He tells Yuruma to solve this question but then stops, stating that he would not know. But he is shocked when Yuruma approaches the blackboard. He asks if he can solve this, but Yuruma only watches the question dumbly and says that he does not understand. The teacher asks him why did he even came up and tells him to return to his seat. Yuruma apologizes and walks back to his seat. The whole class erupts in laughter. After the class, Azuma, Chizuru and the girls continue their chat. Moan asks Chizuru if there is anyone and Chizuru's interested. Her friend says that they are continuing from just now. Chizuru simply states that there is not. Her friend says that if she is forced to choose. Chizuru mutters if she is forced and then looks around. She finds a familiar figure lurking in the back of the class and turns to her friends. She says that maybe it is Yuruma-kun. The group looks at her in shock. She yells at them to hold on and says that she just finds him a bit interesting and it is not love or anything like that. The rest of the girls squeal at her denial. Then she definitely says that it is the truth. Moore states that she is serious. Her eyes are not smiling. She thinks and wonders out loud if Yuruma-kun is interesting. She says that he is handsome but slender and seems weak. She opens her eyes when she hears a clutter. The rest turn to see him fallen on the ground and someone bulky on the side who pretends to ask if he hit Yuruma. Yuruma only denies it and says that it is alright. But the guy kicks his hand again and repeats that he did not see him again. Chizuru instinctively rushes to help him but the guy glares at her and she stops. Yuruma starts to pick up her stuff as the two students walk away. Those two were Kuga Daichai and Senkuji Katsumi. Moan comments that Kuga is the worst. Her friend says that he is that kind of person. Moan comments that he is a special scholarship student for karate, and it seems pretty bad. Her friend wonders out loud why Senkuji-kun gets along with him. Moan suggests that it was middle school maybe. Chizuru looks at Yuruma sadly as he walks out. Later Chizuru approaches him while he is carrying boxes from the staff room. He looks at her all confused, then she introduces saying that she is Azuma Chizuru from the same class. She takes a box from him as he is carrying 3 boxes stacked on top of another. He tells her that it is fine, and says that it is better if she does not get involved with him because Kuga might target her. She stays silent for a minute and tells him that he will not find out. They reach the music preparation room. She sighs in relief and asks if the teacher made him carry something this heavy by himself. He looks up at her and thanks her. She yells at him to stop thanking her. She says that it is because, at that time, she could not do anything. She says that it is something like atonement for that. For her own sake, she spreads her arms and awkwardly says that it is because Kuga-kun is big and scary. Yuruma laughs and agrees with her, saying that it is true as he starts to put the boxes away. She stammers as she asks if Kuga-kun is from the same middle school as him. Yuruma denies that and says that their middle schools were different. They went to the same elementary school. He smiles and comments that she sure is kind but says that he will be fine. He states that he does not think much of Kuga's actions. Chizuru sadly thinks that that was done to him, and he does not think anything of it. She hesitantly says that if it is like that she will go to the teachers. But Yuruma stills and sends her a nasty look. She flinches, and he turns back saying that it is really fine. Then she tries to suggest something else but Yuruma interrupts her and with a deathly serious look tells her to not do anything. He states that it is more of a nuisance than Kuga. With that, he walks away, leaving Chizuru in shock. Later she exclaims to her friend group that she does not get him. She asks why does he not want to tell the teachers about something like that. She repeats everything that he said and cries that she got so mad that tears are coming out. Her friend tries to calm her down as Moan says that Chizuru's always had too much unnecessary kindness and righteousness since way back, and states that it will be making things worse, so she should better stop. But Chizuru still protests, saying that Kuga-kun is just strange. Moan states that that is what she is talking about. Her friend agrees and says that Kuga-kun is also strange but Yuruma-kun is also strange. She wonders why he said something like that. Chizuru quietly eats her sandwich and says that she is sure he is afraid that Kuga-kun will find out if he talks to the teachers. Others agree with her, saying that it is probably that. But Chizuru continues that Moan said that he is handsome but slender and seems weak. She says that Moan might have hit the bullseye. She bids everyone goodbye as she leaves for her home. She curses that the bus left. She thinks it is 30 minutes till the next bus. She thinks she should walk to the station. On her way she finds Yuruma-kun walking ahead of her and realizes that he talkies this route. She still remembers that nasty look he sent her and states for her to do nothing and says that it is more of a nuisance than Kuga. She slows her pace and thinks that it would be awkward if she overtook him. She stops and looks ahead of her. He is gone and she wonders where did he go. Suddenly a giant man appears in front of her and topples her to the ground. He covers her mouth and sits on top of her. She tears up as she realizes that this is a pervert. She screams in her mind that she has got to run. She manages to take his hand off her mouth and yells for someone to help. However, a knife is placed right above her head. He repeatedly warns her that if she screams he will kill her. He asks if she understands, and he tells her to nod if she understands. Terrified by his threat, she nods. He puts her hand over her collar and tears apart her uniform top. She quickly covers herself but he tells her to move her hands. He suddenly grins like a maniac and she tears up. He puts a hand on her knee and tells her to relax. He tells her not to worry and tells her that he has got good technique. She covers her eyes and cries. She does not want this and thinks that if the first time was with the person she likes it would have been great. Suddenly the giant monster is kicked in the face, which immediately sends him flying to the ground and away from her. The man gets up with blood trailing down his nose and asks Yuruma who is he. Chizuru quickly gets up and covers herself. She finds Yuruma standing between her and the guy. Yuruma mutters that he found him. The giant man curses at him and lunges at him with his knife. Yuruma skillfully grabs his hand and throws him to the ground, painfully twisting his arm and kicking him in the face again. Chizuru looks at him as he finally drops the knife. She starts crying hard. Yuruma asks if she is alright and she looks at him hesitantly. He apologizes first and says that he has a favor to ask of her. He tells her to leave that man to him and says that he will also take responsibility and turn him over to the police. He tells her not to tell anyone what she just saw. She looks at the ground and thinks that Yuruma-kun's gaze is on the front. She can only obey. Suddenly she feels a weight on her shoulder and finds that it is Yuruma's uniform. He tells her that she can wear it back as his clothes are torn. He smiles and tells her that he will see her tomorrow. She sat on her seat wearing Yuruma's shirt. Still thinking about Yuruma, she remembered Mon's words saying that he is handsome but slender and seemed weak. He thinks that Mon is completely wrong. She thinks that something like that she has only seen it in movies. She puts her head on her lap as she remembers her molester's terrifying face. She exclaims that thank goodness someone came. She realizes that she forgot to thank Yuruma-kun. Back in the forest, Yuruma stabs the knife in his chest. He then raises her hand to the sky and tells her grandfather that he can do it, he can kill people. The blood on his palm is the proof of his study. With this, he can also kill them. Shun is setting up the table when his grandfather asks him if he remembers his promise to him. Shun spells let those who have changed go. His gramps says that he is right and says that people need a chance to change and be reborn. Shun pours the liquid into the glass. He mutters that since they were killed it has been 4 years. He says that he went to a different middle school from the 5 of them, so he does not know the current them well. His gramps state that it is more than enough time for them to be reformed. 4 years is long. He says that only humans are able to acknowledge, reflect on their sins, and then forgive them. Having that quality is what makes one human. However, he states that if nothing has changed, then that is not a person. He cuts through the flesh of the fish and tells Shun to take hold of their bowels and tear them out, rip off their skin and kill them thoroughly. Shun agrees and says that he prays that they have not changed. They look at the pictures that are spread on the tables and his gramps ask who is first. Madoka Hiro, who is first year at Tai's High. Expertise, running errands. An extreme religious fanatic. Will even lick shoes if it is to earn extra points. Next is Senkuji Katsumi, first year at Maizeki High. Expertise, toys. He loves tormenting the weak more than his 3 meals a day. His favorite is the air gun. Shun often became his target and cried easily from it. After that Ashiro Yuuga, first year at Taizei High. Expertise, handsome. He is called a womanizer after becoming a 6th grader. Handsome playboy's current private life is a mystery. Next is Kuga Daichai, who is a first year at Maizeki High. Expertise, in violence. He is a victor of the National Middle School Judo Championships at 90 kilograms. Shun was often his practice kit for trying out his techniques. Has known Shigoku for the longest. The last one is Shigoku Kyowu, first year at Taizei High. Expertise, evil intent. He is the control tower of the 5. Their king, the central figure of the killing of his parents. Passed the test to the top prep school in the prefecture with full marks. Currently looking to enter the medical faculty. Chizuru finds Yuruma walking ahead of her toward the school, and immediately her mind is flooded with the memories of tomorrow's events. She is determined as she thinks that she has to thank him for before. She calls out to him and bids him a good morning. She then awkwardly thanks him for saving her before. She says that he wanted to thank him. Suddenly Mon appears out of nowhere. She yells that it is so hot this early in the morning. Chizuru almost throws her bag at Mon and yells at her to shut up and go away. She suggests Yuruma to move to somewhere else. They are at the school staircase when Yuruma asks if this is for him as he holds a little keychain with a picture of a comical chicken. He wonders what is this. Thankfully Chizuru answers him without asking that it is Jibe Bird-chan from the Chibe to Animal series. She exclaims that it is so cute and says that it is a protective charm. There are also others, like Jibe Dog and Jibe Cat, but Jibe Bird-chan is rare. Then suddenly she stops and exclaims that that is not it and apologizes for rambling. Shun thinks that she has got strange hobbies. Then she suddenly tells him that next time Yuruma-kun would be protected by that. He looks at her, then puts it in his pocket and thanks her. He says that with this, it would be nice if he is not caught nodding off in class. She tells him not to sleep in the class. She adds that there is one more thing that she wants to tell Yuruma-kun. She looks at him nervously and then shakes her head saying that it was nothing after all. Then she runs off. He thinks that it seems like it would be fine even if Azuma-san is not so wary. He sees two boys approach him from upstairs. He turns to the side and realizes that it is Senkuji Katsumi, 15 years old. Blood type has excellent grades, bad at sports. Parents are alive and well, no siblings. Grew up in a well-off family. Seems like he's pretty popular with the girls, but there is no gossip about him. 4th year in elementary school, Shun was friends with Senkuji. It started due to a seat change. He was seated next to him. Shun, who was timid and had no friends, was happy when he talked to him. But soon he realized that was a mistake. He saw Senkuji put a bug on the nozzle of his gun as he blew it up and freaked out. Senkuji was taken by them. He thinks that the one who killed that cat was probably Senkuji too. The main cause of all of that was him. But Shun has to confirm this. He remembers talking to his grandfather. He wonders how would he confirm this. 2 weeks have passed since the entrance ceremony, and there is not anything suspicious about Senkuji. Shun getting close to him has not sparked anything. He thinks that he has only learned ways to kill from his grandfather. Suddenly a familiar voice calls out to him. Senkuji Katsumi is slowly approaching him while running as he asks if he remembers him. Yuruma is shocked as he spells his name. Senkuji exclaims that he is so glad and says that it has been since elementary school, so he was wondering what to do if Shun forgot. Shun, still in a daze, replies that there is no way he could forget. He dreadfully wonders for what purpose did he call out to him. He looks at Senkuji's smiling face and wonders what is with that smile. Senkuji suddenly says that only if he would like next Sunday. He asks if Shun would like to hang out with him. Shun is deep in shock. Later next Sunday, Senkuji says that he is glad and says that he thought that Shun would not come. He asks Senkuji why he wants to hang out with him. Senkuji replies that since they are in the same school now, he thought he would like for them to get along again. Shun only hums in reply and thinks that Senkuji wants them to get along again. Certainly, there was a time when they innocently played together, but they have got a history that can't just be wiped off. He wonders if Senkuji wants to ignore that and get along. He questions what kind of view is that. Shun does not know what Senkuji Katsumi is plotting, but he knows that he is not going to overlook his evil. Senkuji points at the photo booth and suggests that as a commemoration of today, they should take a pic. Senkuji makes various poses while Shun only stands still. He looks at the pics and exclaims that he is so happy. He says that he is going to paste it on his phone. He gives half of them to Shun, who thanks him in return. Later he drags Shun to a store where they try various clothes. He hands Shun a t-shirt with 6 packs drawn on it. Shun looks at his hand weirdly where Senkuji is holding him. He thinks that something is strange. Later they are sitting in a cafe where Shun can only see couples sitting together. Senkuji suddenly comes up and sits beside him. Shun asks him and Senkuji apologizes, pulling up the chair in front of him and saying that normally it is facing each other. Senkuji says that it has been a while since he has had so much fun. Shun realizes that Senkuji is facing him and wonders what on earth are these feelings. Senkuji blushes as he rubs his nose in a shy manner. Shun this that he has felt it before. It is not malice, rather than that, this is friendliness. He sees Senkuji tear up and asks him what is wrong. Senkuji trunks away and apologizes, wiping off his tears. He says that somehow he thought maybe he was the only one having fun. He says that Yuruma-kun is kind of absent-minded. Yuruma tells him to pardon him. Senkuji still smiles and says that it was wrong of him to be wishing for something from Yuruma-kun. Yuruma dreadfully repeats in his mind that wishing for something from him is wrong. He wonders what about something called regret. The things from the past are. He questions if it is possible that Senkuji has really changed. After this day, Senkuji often came to talk to Shun. Shun was walking around in campus when he heard Daichai ask Senkuji that he had been hanging around Yuruma. He peeks a little to listen in. He realizes that Kuga and Senkuji are talking about him. Daichai asks Senkuji what is he trying to pull. Senkuji hesitantly answers that he has something he regrets. Daichai asks him what is that, but Senkuji simply suggests he goes back. They leave Yuruma dreadfully thinking that Senkuji has changed. Yuruma and Senkuji are walking back home. Senkuji says that even though it is the opposite of his route home, he apologizes to Shun for making him come with him. Shun replies that it is okay. Senkuji states that there is something he wants to show Yuruma-kun. He walks beside a house and says that it is around here. Shun takes this moment to ask his question. He says that in Senkuji wanting to get along with him, there is one thing that has been on his mind. He asks when they were in elementary school what he did to Shun, and he asks if Senkuji remembers that. He says that without touching on that, building this kind of relationship is strange to him. He asks Senkuji what are his thoughts about this. Senkuji suddenly kneels on the ground, slams his head on the ground, and exclaims that he is terribly sorry. He says that he wanted to apologize so many times but he was scared. The smile from that time. He thought that it would be nice if they could continue to pass time like this. He wills in his mind for Senkuji to stop. He thinks that the smile from that time is rising to the surface. Then Shun hears a mule from nearby and he trunks around as Senkuji says that this one, he was looking for her. He approaches to pick her up but there is a truck approaching them. Senkuji picks up the kitten and dives out of the way. Shun looks at him in shock and thinks that he risked his life to save a kitten. All the past images of him in his mind shattered. He thinks that there is no mistake that Senkuji has been reformed. Then suddenly Senkuji turns to him and gravely says that it is now. Something crashes on his back and he realizes that it is Chizuru. He does not notice Senkuji picking up the rock to smash it over his head. After that, he opens his eyes and finds himself tied up. He groans in pain. Senkuji appears at his side with the innocent kitten in his hand and asks if he has woken up. Then he hears a sob and sees that Chizuru is just beside him in a similar position tied up. She is sobbing. Senkuji starts that he has always regretted this, that in elementary school, he was not able to kill him. He exclaims that he thought that it belonged to Shigoku-san, so he was going to give up, but Shun appeared before his eyes. The kitten is placed closer to him. Senkuji claims that never again will he hand the prey he is aiming for over to anyone else. Hiruma wonders where is he and what happened. He looks at Senkuji and suddenly remembers that he was completely deceived by Senkuji. He turns to his side and wonders why is Azuma-san here. He remembers her crashing into him and thinks that he should have been cooperating with Senkuji. She apologizes to him and says that Senkuji saw her that time. She cries as she says that she thought she had to hide it. Hiruma wonders what she is talking about but Senkuji shows him the pic from that time she was getting molested. He states that he passed by coincidentally. Shun looks at him in shock. Senkuji gleefully says that after that, Yuruma-kun came running to help. He was so cool she could have fallen for him. He puts a hand on his mouth and says that though things turned out like this he does not know why Yuruma-kun was able to move like that but says that if he ties Shun up like this, he should not be able to move at all. He looks behind where his hands are tied up and thinks that this is different from the one he learned from Gramps. Senkuji answers that it is Torinawa, otherwise known as the killer of escapes. He says that in the Edo period, people devised various ways of binding to prevent criminals from escaping them. Among them, it seems that no one has ever broken out from the Torinawa. He says that Shun can't get out unless he rips off his fingers. He read books and studied about this. Chizuru asks him why he has gone so far. Senkuji smiles and answers that it was for prudence. Then he says one more thing and puts his hand in his pocket. He pulls out what seems to be a remote with a button on top of it. Senkuji states that just in case anything happens, he has arranged for this place to blow up with the push of a button. Chizuru looks freaked out while Shun only then takes notice of the smell. Senkuji continues that if he presses the switch, the electricity will run. The bottles of kerosene he has scattered around the room will ignite. Then he apologizes for no reason and tells them to be careful. Senkuji suddenly bursts out laughing. He yells that finally, Yuruma-kun, with these hands, he can, his most beloved person. Chizuru asks him what is he talking about when she hears him say his most beloved person. He laughs and punches Shun square in the face. Chizuru yells at him to stop. He yells back that he is just starting and punches Shun again. He states that as he torments him, he has to see lots and lots of Yuruma-kun's agonized expressions. He continues to punch Shun. He says that the only time he will stop is when Yuruma-kun dies. But then he suddenly stops and finds Chizuru on his foot. She asks if he is Senkuji's beloved person, which means Senkuji likes him. Then she asks why do something like this. However, Yuruma interrupts her and tells her that it is all right. He says that just this much is nothing to worry about. Then Senkuji darkly states that he will use that. He walks to the table and suddenly the kitten on the ground is struck by a nail. Shun realizes and mutters out loud that it is a nail gun. Senkuji says that it is a tool that uses gas to drive in nails. He points it at the fallen girl and says that he did tell her to please stay still. The nail hits a few inches away from her face and she flinches back as a few more nails are shot her way. Shun calls him and Senkuji stops. He disappointingly says that it is as he expected, that even if he sees that kind of face from Azuma-san, it is not exciting at all. Chizuru looks terrified as tears roll down her eyes. He tells her that the cat's name is Miida. He found it in the basement of the abandoned house and fed and doted on it. He maliciously says that be it a lover or pet, the more affection someone holds for them, the more unimaginable the look of anguish and suffering on their faces when they die. He says that this is precisely why he wants to see it, how this adorable cat dies, and what the agony looks like on the face of someone who loved it. Chizuru yells it is because he did not truly like it, and that is why he is able to do things like that. He points the gun at her and states that no, that it is because he truly likes it that he is able to savor these feelings. He shoots the nail at her and pins her to the ground by her hair. He says that putting something he loves in a pitiful state is almost like a forbidden office love, just like how a pure boy discovers sex, but then he says that it is even more than that. He shoots again and says that he can taste the best sense of immortality. He laughs as he sees that she has soiled her skirt and says that this is a slightly more exciting sight. Shun thinks he is insane. Chizuru sniffles on the ground and pleads him not to look. Senkuji turns to Shun and says that this gratification is Shigoku-san. Let him gain awareness. Shun looks up at him at the familiar name. He gleefully asks Yuruma-kun, what kind of expression will he show him? He tells Senkuji to try. He thinks that he was mistaken, their evil is bottomless. Senkuji shoots one nail at Shun's foot and starts laughing. He excitedly asks him if it hurts or if is it painful. Again he shoots and nailed Shun's shoulder. He yells this time it is 2. He yells more and more. He keeps shooting all over Shun's body, wounding him. Even Chizuru yells at him to stop. Senkuji tells him to show him his agonized and twisted expression. But surprisingly Shun looks completely unbothered by all of it. He wiggles his tied fingers behind him. Senkuji is shocked and says that the color of his face did not even change. Chizuru also looks surprised at him as tears roll down her cheeks, but he says that he has gotten used to it. To this level of pain 4 years ago, thanks to them. He asks if Senkuji is planning on using tools forever. He states that if it is at this level, his eyebrow will not even twitch until he is dead. Senkuji pauses and Shun dares him if he is scared of touching a dead man's body. He states that this is why, since way back, he has always used tools. Senkuji looks at his gun and puts it down. Shun continues that in the end, using his own hands to kill is perhaps limited to bugs and cats. Senkuji throws his hands in the air and says that he understands. He says that if Shun goes so far as to say that, he wraps his hands around his neck and says that with these hands he will kill Shun. Shun looks like he is choking and Chizuru yells at Senkuji to stop. He cries as she thinks that at this rate, Yuruma-kun will end up dying. Senkuji asks Shun how is it, his strangling. He asks him if it is to his satisfaction. He sees Shun's eyes roll back but suddenly his expression is back to being unbothered. He says that he has been waiting for this time. His hands are suddenly free and he pushes Senkuji back and he falls all across the tables. Chizuru looks at him in wonder as he walks up from the chair he was tied to and picks up the remote that was set to destroy the room. He states that Senkuji finally let go of the switch. He shows it to Senkuji and says that even if he untied the ropes and counterattacked, with a light press of the switch, it is the end. Senkuji holds his neck and asks him how he got out of it. Yuruma rolls his sleeves up and says that it is 68, the number of joints in a person's body. He folds his elbow in a weird angle and says that he can freely control almost all of them. He tells Senkuji that the way he strangles is no good. He puts his fingers in front of him and demonstrates that thumbs in the windpipe, and index finger to the carotid artery. Middle finger applies pressure to the jugular vein like this. He wraps his hand around Senkuji and chokes him. Senkuji gasps in pain and tries to get out of his grip. Yuruma continues that in 8 to 14 seconds, he will lose consciousness. And just as he states, Senkuji falls to the ground with his saliva falling from one corner of his mouth. Shun states that in 3 to 5 minutes, damage to the cortex of the brain, in 7 to 10 minutes, to his brain stem, and then he dies. But Shun gravely says that he will not let him die yet. He turns to look at the tied-up girl who is also gazing at him. Senkuji pants when he wakes up next and notices that his hands are chained right above his head. He sweats as he finds Shun standing right in front of him. He greets Senkuji and claps, congratulating him that he is the first. Senkuji hesitantly repeats about him being the first. Yuruma welcomes him to the beginning. Senkuji thinks that this room is strangely warm. He notices that vinyl is stretched across one side, a table and mirror, but he swarts when he lays his eyes on a peeler. He gravely wonders what is going to happen to him. Yuruma suddenly spoke up and said that he once saw in a film, if he covers as much as he can with a sheet, no matter what flies out, the cleaning up will be easy. Senkuji wonders what is he talking about when he sees Shun holding a gun up. He says that he looked for it, an airgun of the same model that he used. In the past, the four had tied up Shun to a tree. Shun grimaced as another shot missed him. Daichai yells that it was another miss. Another boy comments that it is pretty hard to get a hit. Senkuji suggests they should shoot from closer up, and says that they will get to see your agonized expression too. He points the gun to Shun's stomach and shuts it. Shun screams in pain, and in real time Shun points the gun to Senkuji's eyes. He says that he was just kidding. He tells him that the place where he shot really hurt. He pulls up the weight of his shirt and pulls it up, showing a healed bruise. He says that he had to gouge the flesh out because the pellets got embedded inside. Getting them out was difficult. Senkuji stammers an apology, but Shun says that he wonders how much it will hurt if he shoots his eyeball. If Senkuji went blind and if his eyeball ruptured. Senkuji suddenly cries out that he has no choice, and he had no choice but to obey Kyowu-san. He yells that he was afraid. He tells Shun that Kyowu-san said that the experiment is to see how far Yuruma-kun has to be cornered before committing suicide. Shun stares at him, and Senkuji suddenly starts to say that he might have been brainwashed. He says that he was always Kyowu-san's puppet. It was all because he was weak-willed. He tells Shun that he has always regretted it. He tells Shun to take him to the police. He will testify for everything. Shun fakes a laugh at that and says that after all this time, he orders Senkuji to tell him about what he really thinks. He says that this being his true thought is not possible and that he is sweating really hard. Senkuji says that is because this room is really hot. He asks Yuruma-kun if he is not feeling hot. Shun silently goes back and picks up the mirror. He says that he is feeling hot. Senkuji asks what that means. Shun looks at the mirror and replies that it is the reaction to your nerves being oversensitized, perhaps. He remembers his grandfather told him that during the Great War, among the enemies there were some who received training to endure torture. They would not break easily. And so, the people of the Kitayama Corps had a method they used. He says that it was called peeling. Senkuji fearfully looked at the peeler that had blood dripping out. He trembles as he asks Shun what is he planning to do with that peeler. Shun calmly replies that that has already been used and shows him the mirror. The flesh on his chest and thighs had been peeled off. He screamed in terror at his own sight. His grandfather told him that if he removed the 0.2 millimeters of surface skin, he would have exposed the nerves underneath. Touch the nerves that were exposed after peeling, and it seems that it will feel like they are being scorched by a burner. Shun comments that it should be about the time the anesthesia wears off. H testily pokes Senkuji's peeled off flesh and watches him writhe in pain. Senkuji thinks he will die from this. He cries and apologizes to Shun repeatedly. Then he sees Shun pull out an air gun. He keeps apologizing again and again, but Shun does not stop. Senkuji just being touched made it hurt so much if he used something like that. His thought process was crashed as Shun pulled the trigger. He pukes from the impact and pain. Then he yells that it is all Shun's fault. He says that if only he did not reject him at that time. He says that Shigoku Kyowu acknowledged him. He yells that he taught him joy. It was Kyowu who told him to try giving that insect a name and raising it. He told Senkuji to kill it after adoring it, and next is hurting his beloved Yuruma-shun. He starts laughing like a maniac and yells that he wants to see more of his suffering figure. He says that it is such a blessing that his family died. He says that Shun's brother, who is living like a bug, will definitely die. He bets his face at that time will be a sight to behold. Shun remains silent and then says that he finally spoke his true thoughts. Senkuji's mouth starts to foam, and blood drips down his legs. After that, he comes out to see Chizuru sitting on the floor still tied up. As soon as she sees him, she asks if his injuries are okay, and asks about Senkuji. He tells her that this time, it is not a promise. It is coercion, and tells her to choose. He tells her to be silent about what happened here or die. She silently looks at him. After that, Shun collapses as soon as he reaches his doorstep. His grandfather calls out to him, but he does not open his eyes but says that he did it. His grandfather looks at his sleeping form and tells him to leave the cleaning up to him. After at school, the classroom teacher announces that it seems Senkuji has not returned home since Friday last week. He says that if anyone knows something about it, please let the teachers know. The class gossips, wondering about what happened to him. His friend says that he was so cheerful. Hi wonders what happened to him. Moon wonders out loud what happened. But Chizuru does not answer. She is looking at the empty desk of Shun. Shun is at the hospital sitting beside Kakeru, who is sleeping soundly. His bandages are removed, but his face is covered in scars. He says that it has been a while. He tells him that the sakura are falling outside, and it is going to become a little warmer. He says that the azaleas in the hedges at school are blooming beautifully, and he ended up bringing one along. He opens his palm where a single flower rests. He says that they often use to suck the nectar out. Kakeru does not respond. He wonders when will he wake up. He thinks that if he wakes up, he wonders if he will wait a little longer for him. He thinks just 4 left. Just a little more. At Crime Division, Hashida Police Station, Police Patrol Officer Doda Asako asks if Anzai-san is here. An officer tells her that if she is looking for Anzai-san, he is in the break room. She salutes and leaves. He comments that she has got it tough being partners with a weirdo like Anzai-san. that makes her stop in her tracks as he says that her promotion will be delayed. She walks out without saying anything in return. She dreadfully thinks that by pairing up with someone from headquarters, being recommended to headquarters, the promotion she should have received, all her plans are ruined. Then she sees a man weirdly sitting in a chair. She immediately calls out to him and asks what is he doing. She pauses in her approach. She wonders why is she with this person. He replies that he was just absorbing some caffeine. That person is Police Sergeant Ansel Zanishi. She looks at those empty cans and asks how many is he drinking. He replies that it is to avoid destroying his stomach, so he makes sure to drink all of them hot. She yells that no one cares. She says that more importantly, there is another missing person. She says that his name is Senkuji Katsumi, a high schooler attending Maizeki High. He recognizes them, saying that it is from that time Yuruma Shun's classmate. Shun is sitting on his desk as he thinks that at last the first. Next time, he will not be negligent like with Senkuji. He will make sure he is thorough. Then he darkly thinks that if they do not have the thing known as a heart, he will pay extra attention and kill them. The next one is Ashiro Yuuga. In the karaoke room, people were having their fun. Ashiro Yuuga, 15 years old, puts food in his mouth as the lady is resting her head on his shoulder. His phone rings and he gets up. The lady tells him that he should sing next, but refuses that, saying that it is from a customer. There is a message that reads inexperienced and outside, separate. It will be two though. It is asking if that is fine. He types back that it is fine. The message came that they understood, then, at 18 in front of the station. He opens another chat and a person is asking who can go at 18 today. Another replies that he can only after 19. A girl comes out from inside the room and tells him that she can go. He thanks her and says that he is saved. She replies that she is leaving. The lady from before also comes out of the room and calls him out. What is up? She grimly tells him that she wants to stop selling because she has saved enough to pay for university. She says that she is really thankful to Yu-chan. He just smiles and tells her that they should talk properly outside. She asks him what is wrong, coming to such a desolate place. He suddenly pulls her into a kiss. He says in between her breath that they can't because they are outside. But he bites her tongue and grabs it in between his fingers. He asks if she wants to stop selling. She wants to stop forever. He states that to be precise, she is saying that she does not need him. He puts a lighter underneath her tongue and says that to the tongue that is saying strange things it is better to burn it. She tries to say something as her tongue starts to burn. She cries and he gravely says that she used the customers he picked and comfortably made money. He asks if she thought she could say she wants to quit, so she is quitting and just quit like that. He states that he does not really care whether she goes to university or not. But from now on, he orders her to come when he tells her to come and go when tells her to go. He grips her tongue tighter. She hesitantly nods at him when he asks if she understands. He all of a sudden lets go of her head and tongue and apologizes to her. He wraps his hands around her and says that he needs her. He says that he was thinking about what he would do if she disappeared and just. She also hugs him and apologizes, tears falling down her eyes. Then he lets go of her and bends down to meet her height. He tells her that from now on, if anyone tries to leave, he tells Hana to take the initiative and stop them. His phone starts to ring and he tells Hana that work has come in quickly. He pulls out his phone and sees that it is a message from Shigoku Kaiou. He is asking if they can meet under the overhead bridge at 18 hours. He sweats when he realizes that it is from his Kaiou-chan. Ashiro Yuuga is 15 years old. He runs a prostitution service and is involved in drug trafficking. Goes to a private school. His evil deeds with his delinquent friends know no limits. He thinks that it looks like he can kill this time with no misgivings whatsoever. Shun knows that nothing has changed at all from that time. Ashiro is evil. Shun thinks the problem is, how would he corner Ashiro? He has got no connections to any delinquents at all. He hears his doorbell ring. He finds a man standing way too close to the door for comfort. He leans down even more and tells Shun that he is Anzai, a detective from Hashida Police Station. The lady behind him says that she is Uda from the same station. Shun repeats his name and Anzai says that it has been since the case 4 years ago. Anzai thinks that this kid compared to 4 years ago, the air around him has considerably changed. He muses that he can feel him tensing up. Shun asks him if he has come up with extra questions to ask again about 4 years ago. Anzai answers that it is not about that case, but he asks Shun-kun if he knows about what happened to Senkuji-kun. Uda immediately asks him what is he doing. Shun repeats his name and then cluelessly asks what is this about. Anzai simply smiles and replies that it is about Senkuji-kun going missing just earlier. He says that there was information that he talked about a lot with Shun-kun. Shun answers that they are classmates, so they did at least talk. Anzai puts a hand on his chin and says that it is mysterious. He directly asks Shun why was he being good friends with a kid who bullied him. Shun repeats what he said, that he was not being bullied. He reminds him that he said that same thing 4 years ago. Anzai says that he is right. Uda sweats when she hears about bullying. Anzai says then one more. He puts his index finger up and says that speaking from a general perspective, if it was not an accident, but his parents were killed and his little brother was put into a vegetative state by somebody. He asks Shun what would he do. Uda carefully asks him since just now, what has he been up to? He repeats and asks if it was him, what would he do? Shun instantly answers that he would kill them. Then he says that though that is if there was someone like that. Anzai fearfully thinks that look in his eyes. It is as if he is climbing a mountain that is actually an active volcano with the atmosphere of having a picnic. He realized these were not just plain words, but his grandfather suddenly walks in from the inside of the house. He tells Anzai that this is enough. He tells them that this child has begun to look forward since that incident, and if they have gotten what they need, he asks if they could leave. Anzai says that is right, and they should get going. He starts to walk away and Uda quickly follows after him. After they leave, Shun's grandfather tells him that this officer is suspicious. Shun agrees with him as he narrowly watches the officer leave. He says that if only there was no evidence left behind. They hear the train pass through the bridge as the four stand under it. Kaiou grabs a crow and plucks a father out of it as the other three watch him. He tells them that Senkuji has disappeared. They stay silent and Ashiro says that it is impossible. He says that among the 5 of them, to think that someone would disappear without any word or report. Ashiro asks Daichai if he contacted him. He replies that he did but it went to voicemail. Kaiou says that he can think of 3 possibilities. 1. He is alive and can contact them, but did not. 2. He is alive, but can't contact them for some reason. 3. He is dead. All of them tense at the third implication. Daichai says that come to think of it, Senkuji seemed to have some thoughts about Yuruma from 4 years ago. That picks up Kaiou's interest almost immediately. He whispers Yuruma's name. Ashiro says that it is Senkuji after all, so it is probably just that he did not bully him enough or something. The other boy says that it is number 2. He has been confined by Yuruma. Daichai says that there is no way. Kaiou is smiling as he states that it is number 3. He says that they are breaking up for today. After that, he walks out of the tunnel, not heeding the calls of his former classmates. Shigoku Kaiou was bored, because she knew that she was completely flawless. That kind of person remembered the only time she lost an easy game, everything connected. She smiles at the thought of him. The only one who grasped the situation, Shigoku Kaiou, smiled softly. Several days later, 3 men were smoking outside of the store when they saw Ashiro on his bike with someone behind him wearing a helmet. One of the guys asks him who is the kid behind him. Ashiro tells him that she just started working, and he tells Miki to introduce her. The man says that she is a cutie. She tells him that she is Azuma Chizuru. He says that it is a pleasure. At Taizei Academy, Shun knows that this is the private school. Ashiro goes to Taizei High School. He knows that the police are alert, but just to be safe he thinks that he should check how they are moving. Ashiro Yuuga, mother and son household, notorious to the point where he was called a playboy in elementary school, was also enlightened after meeting with Shigoku, and now he has become a scoundrel who runs prostitution services. He wonders why someone like Ashiro picked a prep school, and how are the rumors in school. He approaches a girl and asks her about him. She asks him if by Ashiro-kun if he means that cool guy. She says that she does not really know him well but she thinks he has a girlfriend. Another guy told him that Ashiro is a good man, and he has got good grades too, though it seems like he is not in. A girl tells him that they have been together since middle school, but he has changed. She says that he used to seem pretty mean, but now he has settled down. Shun thinks that no matter who he asks, they all say he is an agreeable youth. He thinks that it is Ashiro he does not know. But the next girl says that since that incident, he has been looking pretty down, and lately he has not even been coming to school. Shun asks that incident. She looks at the missing poster of Sakuraba Karen. Age, 15 years, height, 165 centimeters, clothes, yellow blazer and sepia-colored skirt. He looks at her poster too. Sakuraba Karen, Ashiro's girlfriend who has been dating him since 3rd year of middle school. Ashiro changed after meeting Karen, who grew up with high morals. The reason Ashiro picked Taizei was also because it was Karen's first choice, and she disappeared suddenly. The girl tells him that a few months after back school, she saw him sitting at her desk. She asked her what is she doing. She thought something must have happened, but before she could probe further her friends called her. She tells her that she is leaving first. She says that that was the last time she saw Sakuraba Karen. Shun walks back home and thinks that the next day, a missing person report was filed, but she is nowhere to be found. There was lots of speculation, like suicide or supernatural events, but even now, there are still no leads. She told him that Ashiro looked depressed, and has been absent from school since then. And so, he returned to his evil ways and turned to prostitution services. He thinks that in any case, Sakuraba Karen looks like she could become the key. Later with Chizuru, who was sitting tensely in her seat. She wonders what is with this place. It is dark and the music is grating. And it is full of scary looking people. She thinks they look around the same age. A guy calls a lady called Miki. Chizuru quickly thinks that just when she thought Miki had not been in touch for a while. Anyway, she said she wanted help with her part-time job. She blushes dreadfully, thinking, what kind of part-time job is this? A guy approaches her and tells her that she is cute. Chizuru wonders who is this person. He asks if he can sit with her, but he does not even wait for a reply and makes himself comfortable, putting his hand over her shoulders and getting too close for comfort. He moves his face close to her and says that for them, they can freely have fun while standing by. She inches away from him, wondering what he means, and thinks that he is too close. He murmurs that it is better to deepen relationships with everyone while they are standing by. He puts her hand between her legs and she utters a horrified no. Suddenly Miki calls the man Kawashima and tells him to stop it. She is glaring at him as he walks away while clicking his tongue. She sits beside Chizuru and tells her to be careful around him. She sees him groping at another woman in the room and says that he is trash that only thinks of doing it. Chizuru asks her why is there a bad person like him here and what kind of part-time job this is. Miki apologizes to her and says that this is prostitution. Chizuru is horrified as she looks at her friends. Miki explains that Kawashima arranges for the girls to get customers. She then turns to Chizuru and tells her that just being here is enough. She tells him that she can fly off after a while. She brokenly says that she does not even know what she should do anymore. A tear falls down her face as she asks Chizuru what does she needs to do to make Yuuga happy. Chizuru looks at her dreadfully and wonders if she meant Yuuga Ashiro. Miki says that she thought he would be happy if they got more girls. She states that all the girls here are aiming for Yuuga. She says that she does not want to lose. She glares at Chizuru and tells her not to aim for him. Chizuru carefully asks her what is she saying. But instead of answering, Maki pulls out a cloth and tells her that for now, she can try wearing this. In the bathroom, Chizuru mumbles that she was told to change. So, she went and changed, but she thinks that she is looking pretty good. She is wearing a short school uniform and a short skirt. Then she stands in silence, immediately berating herself and wondering what the heck is she thinking. She yells in her brain that she has got to get out of here quickly. She wonders what she should do about Miki. She is in love with Ashiro. Suddenly the door opens and Kawashima bounces on her. He pans her name in a drunk slur. He wraps her arms around her and says that those clothes are great. He gets close to her face and tells her to do it with him. She disgustingly thinks that he stinks of alcohol and wonders isn't he a minor. He grabs her front from behind, dragging his chin from her shoulders, and says that the truth is that she is all for it. She winced when he touched her and elbows him. He backs off for a minute, letting her fall on the seat. She pants from the struggle and he continues to advance toward her. He puts a hand on the door and turns the knob. He walks forward and says that with this it is just the two of them now. He starts laughing and states that from now on, guys who have work are going to do it, so him being one person can't do anything about it. Chizuru starts to tear up. He comes forward and grabs her legs. She protested loudly and started calling someone for help, but he only grinned and said that no one was listening. There is loud music playing outside. He turned her over roughly so her back was facing him. She cries as she realizes that she once again got caught in this. She remembered Yuruma helping her and mentally pleaded for him to come. Suddenly the door bursts open as someone kicks it down. She turns to see, wondering if it is Yuruma. Kawashima also turns around to see, only to get kicked in the face. That knocked her off of Chizuru and right into the seat that Chizuru was sitting on. He grabbed his bleeding nose as Yuuga told him that lately, his bad behavior has been standing out. He violently grabs the back of Kawashima's head and asks if he did not tell him not to lay a finger on the merchandise. Kawashima is quick to apologize and says that he is sorry. Yuuga bluntly tells him with a cigarette between his lips to pay up if he wants to do it. He adds that there is no employee discount. Kawashima tears up and says that he will not do it anymore. Chizuru looks surprised at the scene. Yuuga tells Kawashima to go home for today. Kawashima runs out of the bathroom while clutching his bleeding nose. He politely asks Chizuru if she is Miki's friend. He turns to leave and tells her that those clothes suit her and walks away. Chizuru thinks that maybe he is unexpectedly a good person. She gets out of the bathroom too. Miki asks her where did she go and Chizuru apologizes, saying that she was in the toilet just a bit. Then she asks Chizuru if she knows where Yuuga is. Chizuru asks in return if he is not here. But another guy interrupts them and says that if they are talking about Yuuga, he went out. Mickey asks him where did he go. The guy replies that he does not know but he is not coming back today. He takes a sip from his glass and says that sometimes he leaves to wherever. Chizuru repeats after him in question. He says that Yuuga goes to some place even they do not know about. They do not know when he leaves either, so he says that maybe he goes there pretty often. Yuuga is carrying a few bags in an apartment. He opens the door and grins. He looks at the woman on the ground, chained up and naked. He asks if she is eating properly. She turns to him and smiles widely. She rushes towards him but falls as the chains fall short. She keeps laughing as her nose bleeds and maniacally laughs, yelling that she will kill him. He tells her not to say that and says that he is paying for this place and even brought food back. He holds the bag he was carrying up. He states that there is no woman better than Karen. Karen starts to cry as he takes her without reluctance. He thinks other than an opening. Girls do not hold any other purpose. It is just an opening for him to bury his desire. He tells the girl crying below her that to him she is the best opening. He yells that only when he does it with her can he quench his thirst. He states that he will not hand her over to anyone. Yuuga repeats again and again that he will not let anyone have Karen. She continues to cry below him and pleads for him to stop. But suddenly he hears a clang from someone behind him. Outside, Chizuru, horrified at the sight, can't help but take a step back, not noticing that her leg collided with an empty bottle. Immediately Yuuga yells who is there and Chizuru runs away. A few minutes before this, Mickey had told her that she had got to get to work after this, so she told her to go and follow Yuuga. Chizuru continues to run as she thinks this is bad and knows that he found out. She realizes that Ashiro-kun is bad news after all. She does not look back as she wonders if it is better to contact the police. She desperately thinks about Yuruma-kun. The next day, the guy at the entrance asks if Chizuru wants to quit already. He comments that she has not even started working yet. She feels bad for Mickey, but she has got to quickly stop coming to this kind of place. She remembers Yuuga and she can't believe a person this scary exists. But the guy in front of her tells her that for this kind of thing, she should go directly to Yuuga. She stammers that she does not understand. But suddenly out of nowhere Yuuga appears, his smoky breath filling the air beside Chizuru. He smiles and asks if they called him. He asks the guy if he can lend Chizuru to him for a bit. After the slide in a separate room, Chizuru asks him what is wrong. He pulls out his phone and taps on it. He tells her to take a look at this. He shows Chizuru his phone screen. It was the photo of Karen with a horrified look on her face and naked. She immediately realizes that this is the person from yesterday. He concludes with her reaction that it really was Chizuru yesterday. He nonchalantly asks if she is scared of chains. He asks if it looks like she is being confined. She tries to deny it, but Yuuga smiles broadly and pats both of her shoulders. He tells her to rest assured and says that it is just that kind of play. Chizuru also gives off a laugh, clapping her hand, and says that everyone has their own tastes. But then he slowly pulls out a knife from his back pocket and swings at her, missing her by an inch. She yells in surprise. He grabs his mouth to keep her quiet and throws her to the floor. He gives an apologetic apology and darkly says that since she saw that, he has got no choice but to kill her. The cold metal touches her neck and tears start to pool in her eyes. Shun brings the hot cups of tea to the room and puts them on the table. He asks his grandpa if he can get those arrangements ready. The old man takes a sip of his tea and asks if he is already making a move. Shun also sits down, takes his cup and says that he is and he needs one more piece. He says that if he can get that one piece, he could drop Ashiro to rock bottom. He remembers the dazed looks on Yuuga's face when he asks Yuruma if he knows what sexual curiosity is. He was leaning over Yuruma. The current Yuruma stirs his cup. Yuuga is still holding Chizuru down and utters that she saw that, so now she has to die. He presses the knife closer to Chizuru and bids her a goodbye. But suddenly the door opens and the guy from before calls out to Chizuru-chan, saying that she has a request. He sees Yuuga sitting over Chizuru and asks if he walked in on something. Yuuga simply smiles and says that everything is fine here and warns Chizuru not to mess with him. The guy tells him that it is Chizuru's first job. Yuuga suggests that they should celebrate. Meanwhile, Chizuru trembles as she sits up, lightly touching the place where the knife had grazed her. She thinks just a little more and she really would have been killed. Yuuga steps closer to her and crouches down to her level. He tells her to come back here after work. He says that he will decide what to do with her. She is standing in front of the hotel wearing what Mickey gave her the other day. She mutters that it is a hotel, room number 303. She thinks that if she ran away now without even introducing herself, she does not know what they would do. She wonders what kind of person does that to a customer. But if it is those bad people, she clutches her arms around her and trembles, but she thinks on the other hand, if she opens the door and someone greets her saying that he has been waiting for his cute princess. A truly handsome man was standing in the room with a bouquet in his hand as he said that he brought her these 100 million roses. She exclaims that it is wonderful. He asks if it is her first time and says that he will be sure to be gentle with his princess, vividly emphasizing each syllable. And suddenly she is in a different outfit. She is in 3 different outfits before her clothes are finally torn. She thinks maybe this could also be fun. Then she exclaims in her brain that there is no way is this going to be fun. And she exclaims, why would it be 100 million roses? She stands in front of room 303 and she thinks that she just has to open this door. There is no turning back now. She hesitantly grabs the handle and opens the door, only to find Yuruma standing there while nonchalantly holding a pack of protection in his hand. He trunks to her and tells her that she kept him waiting. Chizuru is largely surprised by Yuruma's presence in the love hotel as he bluntly tells her that she kept him waiting. She steps back and slams against the door. She leans on it. She sweats as she wonders why is Yuruma-kun here. Even though this is an illegal service, she concludes that this means Yuruma-kun is someone who is into that kind of thing. He bluntly tells her that she is wrong. He shows her his phone screen and says that he made a reservation based on this photo of a girl. He tells her that she can tell from the photo that it is her. She looks at the screen and exclaims what is with that photo. He asks if she did not know. Then she realizes that this means he picked her for her first job. He throws a pillow on the back of her head and tells her to calm down. He tells her that he wants her to tell him about Ashiro. She looked at him in question but answered him nonetheless. After the briefing, Shun mutters that Sakuraba Karen is with Ashiro. Chizuru looks at him curiously. Yuruma remembers when Daichai was holding him as a child and told him not to try and move. He told him to stop struggling as Yuruma tried to wiggle out of his grip. Daichai tells Yuuga to let him have it. As Yuuga walks closer and leans on him, he asks if he knows what sexual curiosity is. Later he yelled at them to stop screaming that it hurts, but they only told him to shut up. He walked by the river crying after that. Shun clenched his fists at the memory. He tells Chizuru to wait here. He says that he called her here because he wants her to stay away from Ashiro. He tells her that right now, he needs to go to him. She tops him and tells him that she thinks she likes him. He pauses at that and she continues that she does not get it herself, but she says that when she is with Yuruma-kun, she likes him but says that she does not know why. He tells him that she is so mean for not wanting her. He suddenly smiles and thanks her for that. But he tells her that it is no good. Suddenly his expression turns dark and he states that there are 4 people left and he will definitely kill those bastards. He tells her that Ashiro is the second and he can't turn back now. He walks out and tells her to wait for him here. She yells at him to wait and says that if that is the case, then let her help him. He turns to her in shock. She replies that he has saved her so many times already. He replies that this is not happening and he will have to kill Ashiro alone. Both were unaware of the small piece of tech attached to her bag that was transmitting the entire conversation directly to Ashiro. He was sitting at his table silently listening to all of it. He mumbles that he knew it was Yuruma. Shun walks through the traffic in a hurry with a goal set in his mind. Yuuga collects his minions and tells them that it is good that they are all here. He is surrounded by goons. He tells them that their enemy is going to attack. He tells the front and rear guards that they are going to be a lookout for anyone who tries to enter. The guys are thinking who is this enemy, and wondering if he is going to tell them. He tells them that this time Gano is on the move. He states that he will be kidnapping Chizuru. The guys shiver when they hear Gano's name. Yuuga orders them to take their places with a wave of his hand. Yuuga smirks as he thinks that Yuruma is a dumb bastard, not knowing he was bugged. He is surprised that he got Senkuji, but he thinks Kyo-chan's reaction was strange. Kyo had muttered that only 3 were left. Yuzuru thought it was strength, but he never would have thought that Kuga's information would be useful. Kuga had told him that Yuruma was friends with that Azuma girl. He mentally tells Yuruma to come now as he lights his cigarette. He sickeningly smiles and thinks about Yuruma's crying face. He muses that he wants to have a good look at it again. The guys outside chat as one guy stresses that Gano's behavior is odd. The other guy claims that he has never met this Gano guy and asks if he is really that bad. The guy replies that he was called the Bomb. That guy was a demon when he was in elementary school. Fights, extortion, and rape. He says that he stabbed people in 8th grade. He shivers and says that he saw one of Gano's fights in person. He asks the man in front of him if he knows what the most important thing in a fight is. He asks if it is strength, and he replies that he is wrong. Then he says height or weight, but the guy still replies that he is wrong. He answered that it was to get angry fast. In one of the alleys, a guy that was badly beaten up to the ground was begging Gano to stop, as he was taking the woman in front of him. He moaned and exclaimed that this felt good. He trunks her around and grabs her chin. He says that he is gentle with women. He asks her how about it and questions if she wants to feel good. His smile terrifies her. She cries, saying that as if she would feel good with him. She calls him an ugly bastard. He pauses, then smashes her face into the wall behind her. He angrily yells that he is not an ugly bastard. He yells, who is she calling an ugly bastard? The guy on the ground could only watch in shock. Gano finally stops and looks at his bloody fists. He mutters that he thought that he had consent. His phone suddenly starts to ring. He picks it up and asks who it is. A voice comes out of the small device that says that it is him. Gano yells that it is Yu-chan. He dumbly thanks him for the other day. He says that consensual women feel good, and he tells Yuuga to teach him more. He asks him what he needs today. After a while, Gano yells that Yuuga wants him to take the Azuma girl. Gano rubs his head and asks if that means he can do it with her. Yuuga replies that as long as he does not kill her. Gano replies that he will be gentle and asks if he has consented. The guy on the floor goes to the unresponsive girl, pleading out her name. Chizuru in the hotel mutters that she is all alone. She stands in the empty room and thinks that Yuruma leaving by himself makes her a little nervous. He had told her not to open that door no matter what. Before leaving, suddenly there is a knock on the door that catches her attention. She responds to the knock and the other side says that it is housekeeping. She hesitantly thinks that they do not usually come in when it is occupied right. She started to say that it was a little busy, but the key suddenly opened and she exclaimed that the lock moved. The door opens, revealing a monster-like creature smiling widely at her as he says that he is the gentle housekeeper, Gano. Gano dangles the keys in front of him and says that it is as expected of Yu-chan. He made arrangements for a key even at a love hotel. The name rings bells in her head as she realizes that this means he is Ashiro-kun's acquaintance. He puts his hand forward and she realizes how huge he is. He asks if she is Chizuru-chan. He puts his finger under her bottom lip and pulls slightly. He comments that she looks like his first crush. She whacks his hand from her face and takes a run for it, but she can't get very far into the closed room. She stops in front of the bed. He angrily asks why is she running away. He states that he asks Yu-chan for her consent. Chizuru dreadfully wonders what is this about consent. Then Gano dumbly says that he gets it and says that she wants to go to bed. She looks behind her at the clear sheets. He says that he is so glad and removes his shirt, revealing his monstrously thick muscled body. He tosses his shirt away and says that it looks like they have actual consent. He says that this is the first time it happened. She falls into the bed and sends him a terrified look. She throws the sheet over his head, and he somehow manages to tear through it. He sees that she is gone. He mumbles hide and sick, and here he comes. She trembles as she crouches in the bathtub, making herself as small as possible. She desperately wonders what she should do, thinking that she can't call for help without her phone. She knows that if she is found, he will break her. The monstrous face reveals itself and says that he found her, but realizes that the space underneath the bed is empty. He slams the bed down from where he had picked the entire bed up and mumbles that she is not here. He asks where is she. Chizuru slammed her hand on her lips as she heard the cluttering sound of objects falling all around the room. Outside the room was a mess now as the giant human mumbled that she was not there. He suddenly laughs and says that he remembers now his 8th grade love. He says that there was a girl that liked another guy. He states that he could not get her consent, but he did it with her anyway. Then something pissed him off, so he stabbed her. He sulkily says that doing it without consent feels empty. He states that Chizuru-chan reminds him of his first crush. Tears gathered in her eyes. The bathroom door suddenly rattled. The monster's face appears through the blurry glass of the bathroom door as he says that the key won't turn. But then he says whatever and breaks the door open as if it was nothing. He leans down to Chizuru and asks which will it be, consent, yes or no. Terrified of what was happening, she shook her head, not even able to utter a proper no. He grabbed her neck and asked if she was going to say no to the consent. He states that he asked her for consent. She utters that he asks her. He replies that she said the wrong answer. He asks her if she is asking him to do it non-consensually. Then he takes his fist and curses her, ready to punch her into the wall. But suddenly he was kicked to the ground and let go of Chizuru. Behind him was a figure standing with a helmet on his face. He exclaims, who is he? The guy standing at the door states that he is a biker man. Shun was quickly strolling away from the hotel, but suddenly he heard a giant man singing and telling Azuma Chizuru-chan to wait for him. He immediately pauses and turns around, cursing the fact that it is Ashiro's underling. He hurriedly looks around, thinking that it will be troublesome if his identity is revealed. He tries to find something to cover his face. Then he spots a helmet resting over the bike nearby. At the hotel, the giant man comes close to him and asks who he is. Without thinking, he replies that he is Biker Man. Gano repeats after him dumbly, but Chizuru immediately recognizes him. He puts a finger in front of him in a shushing motion. Gano, however, gets angrier and tells Shun to not get in the way. He blabbers something about consent, but Shun punches him in the jaw before he can get anything coherent out. Then he proceeds to kick him in the guts. But the monster is faster. He grabs Shun's leg before it can land a hit and throws him across the floor. Shun quickly sits up and looks at Gano, who is dusting himself as if Shun's punch was nothing. Shun realizes that the difference in physique is too much and his blows are not effective, so he decides that instead of punching, he will stab him. He picks up the pen from the ground and proceeds to attack the monster in front of him. He stabs him in the stomach, which seems to contain muscles only. He thinks that is it until a hard punch to his face sends him flying across the room. He rolls and smashes on the wall. Chizuru almost calls out his name in worry. He huffs as his brain is partially disoriented. He thinks that being stabbed did not even make him flinch. The monster comes before him and says that this is the first time his kind self has gotten this pissed. He yells that this is the first time. Shun manages to block the attack from his hands, but the pressure is still constant, and he bends. He realizes that this guy does not feel pain when he is angry. He pukes blood when his punch connects directly to his gut. He suddenly thinks that he can't do anything, but his grandpa's voice echoes in his head as he thinks of detachment. He backed off, holding his hand as if that was the blade itself. He decides that he will have to do that. Gano loudly curses him to die and lunges a punch at him. However, Shun is also ready to attack as his grandfather's voice rings in his mind. Detachment, he decides to do it. His grandfather told him that the risks are huge for this technique. He would have to get close to your opponent, so if he misses, he will be off to the other world. Shun thinks that if he takes his counterattack, he is not going to be left unharmed. He thinks that it is all or nothing. He returns the attack and a crack resounds in his brain. The giant human is slammed onto the wall. He trunks and says that he can't move his arm, but then he actually looks at his arm and screams. His arm seems to be wholly detached from his shoulders, handing off only from his muscles. He screams, "What is this?" Shun's grandfather told him that usually the joints protect the muscles. Attacks will not reach them. But he says that there are times when there is a path of flesh between the muscles. Right before an attack, there is a moment when the muscles relax. He tells Shun to use that path of flesh to detach. Shun took that moment to remove his arm bone from his shoulders. The monster screams at him, asking what he did. He thinks no matter how much muscle he has, he can't move if his joints are detached. That is the Kitayama core style bare-handed hand-to-hand combat detachment. Gano curses loudly and yells that he can't lift his arms. Then he yells Chizuru's name and runs to her. He asks her what would they do about this. He yells at her to fix it. She screams and yells a loud no to him. She slaps him across the face. After that, Shun ties him up and throws him onto the bathroom floor. Gano curses at him and says that he will remember this. He screams that he will destroy him. He keeps yelling that he will hunt him down. Outside of the bathroom, Shun comments that he is really noisy. He pulls off the helmet and she can see the blood streaks dripping down his head from the earlier fights. Her face brightens as she thinks she is right, it was really Yuruma-kun. He says that he has got to hurry to where Ashiro is. He turns to Chizuru and asks what will she do. She does not answer. She just looks down. He turns around and states that he is leaving. She fists her skirt and calls out his name. And then suddenly she comes close to kiss him on the lips. He stood there frozen by what was occurring before his eyes, or rather what Chizuru was doing. He comes out of the shock when he feels her probing at his lips. He pushes her off by her shoulders and she gazes at him with a dazed expression but a red face. He is staring back blackly, his mind trying to articulate something for this situation out of his mind that is filled with his grandfather's teaching. She shyly apologizes and says that she is sorry. He suddenly speaks up and exclaims that it is fine while stammering. He starts to walk towards the door and mindlessly says that it is fine, or rather it is kind of strange. She looks at him in question. He pokes in his head, almost closing himself out of the room as he stammers out that he is going out now. He tells her to go to the police for protection and make sure that she does not mention him. She looks at him as he walks out in a daze. He thinks that because of Azuma-san his rhythm was unsettled. Later, when the detectives opened the door, the first comment was, "This is so messed up." Police officer Uda Asako comments that she did well to get help, and on top of that, to tie up such a big guy. Chief Police Officer Ansel Zenishi behind her hums in agreement while drinking his juice. The giant monster is still screaming at them to let go of him. The police officer holding him down says that it is impossible for a girl on her own. Ansel Zenishi says that it also looks like his shoulder is dislocated. Doda Asako looks at him in shock and asks why. They approach Chizuru, who is huddled in the corner with a shawl covering her. Police officer Uda Asako salutes her and says that she is Uda Asako from Hashida Station. The guy beside her introduces himself as Ansel Zenishi. After the investigation, Uda says that Chizuru was assaulted by that man and saved by someone she does not know. And Ansel Zenishi asks what about the man she does not know. Chizuru replies that she does not know. She says that she thinks he said something about a biker man. Suddenly the giant man also pokes his head into the view and yells that he was done in by biker man. He screams that he is going to kill him, and the officer holding him down tells him to stop struggling. Ansel Zenishi says that it seems like there really was someone known as a biker man here. Uda Asaka looks at the scene in shock. Then Gano yells Ashiro's name too. He yells at them to let him go to Ashiro. He states that he did not say anything about the biker man being here. Uda Asako repeated Ashiro's name and Ansel Zenishi looked like thunder had struck him. But Uda Asako laughs and says that biker man and Ashiro. She comments that there are lots of funny names. She trunks to Ansel Zenishi with a wide grin only to find him missing. She yells that he is gone. Chizuru tells her that if it is the person from just now, he already took off for somewhere else. Uda Asako stills in shock and curses Ansel Zenishi for moving solo again. Shun is walking with a hoodie and a mask covering his face. In the center of the road, people notice him and wonder what is with him. A guy calls Ashiro and tells him that there is a pretty suspicious guy. Ashiro on the other side of the call grins and mutters that there he is. He mentally asks Yuruma what will he do. He knows that this shop has 3 entrances. The main entrance where Yuruma is, the back entrance, and the duct connecting to the back alley. Ashiro is at the counter, far from all 3 entrances. Ashiro muses that there are guards who take pride in their physical strength stationed at the respective entrances. At the main entrance, there are the Mibu brothers. At the back entrance, Sakuma, Nobuyo and Kawashima are standing. Under the duct, Sira and Deidu. He thinks that if Yuruma defeats those guys and manages to get inside, there are still 20 soldiers. He wonders what will Eruma do, and decides to have some fun. Ansel Zenishi thinks that Senkuji Katsumi, Yuruma Shun and Ashiro Yuuga, they are nostalgic names. All of them are related to that case from 4 years ago. He continues to walk with his hands behind his back and muses that to think that they are all fellow alumni of the same school. A crowd is starting to gather around in front of him. Some are taking pictures and others are exclaiming that it is crazy. He leans into the view and thinks that if he remembers correctly, Ashiro comes and goes pretty frequently around here. His eyes widen in wonder. He utters a small wow at the view in front of him. 30 minutes ago the guy had informed Ashiro that Yuruma is here. Ashiro thinks that not only that but on his own. He smiles thinking that he must be pretty confident in his own strength or wonders if it is sheer recklessness in facing death. He asks if was he not going to call his allies in the first place. He wonders if he will be able to amuse him again. Suddenly there is chaos and all the men look at him in shock. His phone starts to buzz and he picks it up. He questions what is going on. The man replies that it is terrible. He told Ashiro to leave the shop immediately. He told him that from the back exit, a fire has broken out. Ashiro yells what are Kawashima and the rest doing. The man tells him that all of them have been taken out. Behind him, the entire gang had fallen down, and those who did not were helping the ones on the ground. He tells Ashiro that they are going to take these guys and run, so he tells him that Ashiro-san and the others should escape quickly. Then he hangs up the phone, leaving Ashiro to yell about Mibu. Another guy beside him exclaims that smoke is coming out. Suddenly there was a loud sound and the guy asked if that was an explosion. Another yells that it is coming from the kitchen. Yuuga curses as he thinks what is happening. He yells that it is just a firecracker, but the guys decided to scram. He curses them, telling them to wait. But all of them walk out. Suddenly all but one figure remains in the middle of the smoke. With mask and hoodie covering his face, he removes his mask and says that it has been a while. Yuuga comments that he has become capable enough to do this. Shun replies that it seems like it, and then he tells Yuuga that Azuma-san is safe. Yuuga's eyes widen at the proclamation. He asks if he got Gano. Shun comments as he realizes that that was his name. He lunges at Shun with his knife, but Shun effortlessly grabs his face and snatches the knife from his hand and flips him to the ground. He sits on top of him, putting the knife on top of his, and tells him that he is going to lead him to his grave now. Ansel Zenishi watches silently as the fire breaks in the mall. He hears people ask if there is anyone dead. Another comments that it looks like everyone in the building escaped. The officer comments that next, Ashiro Yuuga will go missing. In all blackness, Yuuga yells at Yuruma and asks him where is this. Shun tonelessly tells him to be quiet. Instead of being quiet, Yuuga yells even more from where he is sitting in the chair naked and blindfolded. He curses Shun and yells that he will kill him. Hair of Anguish is a torture device used in medieval Europe. Yuuga yells at Shun, asking where is he. He yells at him to take off the blindfold. Suddenly Shun removes his blindfold. He flinches at the harsh light that falls into his eyes. He causes him as soon as he sees Shun. He asks him if it is revenge, and starts laughing. He asks if he thought that Yuuga would be afraid. He states that after he has always done as he pleased, not fearing anything. He turns serious and tells Shun that actually, he laughs thinking about what will happen to Shun after he is done with him. He bets that Kuga, Hiro, and Kyo-chan will mess him up, even more than his family. Then he starts laughing like a maniac and yells that he laughed so much when they killed his family. He screams that he was so aroused, and it got him off so many times. Shun clenched his hands from where they were hidden behind his pocket. He calls him out and asks if he knows this. He pulls something out of his pocket and dangles it in front of Yuuga. He asks what the heck is that, rather he tells him to listen to what he is saying. Shun suddenly opens the object in front of him and Yuuga starts to sweat. The Pair of Anguish is a metal torture device that opens 4 forks when one rotates its handle. It was originally made for gagging someone by pushing it into their mouth. However, at present, it is most famous for being the worst torture device used on either the anus or vagina. Yuuga yells at him as he bends down behind his seat and looks at the hole in the chair. He curses him, asking what is he trying to do. Suddenly he starts screaming loudly. He realizes that it is inside of him, and Shun is going to open it. He screams, yelling at Shun to not open it. All the while Shun comments that it is surprisingly durable. He spins the key and Yuuga dreadfully thinks that if it opens any further, it is going to tear. And then the spear was fully opened. Shun says that it tore. Blood starts to drip from Yuuga's behind. Shun comments that things other than blood are mixed in. Gross. Yuuga dreads what is dripping behind him. He mentally begs to end it already. But then Shun says that it is time for round 2 and clicks the switch on. It is just the beginning of the tragedy. He flicks the switch on and Yuuga realizes that this place is where he had kept Karen. He looks at the chains that bind Karen, which are now empty. He exclaims that she is not here. He yells at S-Hun and he tells him what is the rush. He tells him that he locked up Sakuraba Karen as his meat toy, so he let her go. He turns to Yuuga and asks what is wrong with him. He taunts that now that he does not have his toy, he asks if he is upset. Yuuga desperately curses him. Shun comments that he met Sakuraba Karen. He tells him that around his 2nd year of middle school, at the time he led a bad group, causing mischief. While he was coming home from school he saw Karen. It was love at first sight. He walks around Yuuga and continues that from then on, he starts to change his appearance every day. About 1 year later he approached her and intensely continued to ask her out, and the two of them started to date. Shun says that Yuuga went to the same high school together and his relationship was sailing smoothly from the looks of it. But months later Karen suddenly disappeared. It looked like Yuuga was depressed cause he lost her, so he thought. But Yuuga kept her locked up. He grabs Yuuga roughly by the head and says that just as he thought, and asks if Yuuga was not satisfied. He asks if that is right, that Yuuga is a piece of trash and he does not have any human affection. Yuuga yells that he is right and says that it feels so good to have her like that. He asks Shun where is his meat toy. He asks where did she go. Suddenly there is a clink on the door, and it opens. Yuuga turns and finds Karen standing at the door, now fully clothed. He laughs and tells Shun to watch this and tells Shun that he is done for. He tells Karen to hurry up and get this rope off of him. He says that they will kill Yuruma together, but Karen only asks him if he really loved her. She tells him that he was her first love. She says that she thought he was a little scary at first, but as they talked, she thought he was an honest person, so they started dating. She suddenly leaned in close to him and asked him what he thought she should do. She hauntingly tells him that her life is ruined. She steps forward with her damaged legs that had skin torn off from the ankles. She tells him that he did this to her, and she says that she has been dirtied. She can't go to school anymore. She can't face her family either. She asks him if he thinks that is any way to live. He sweats and calls out to her as she pulls out something from her pocket. He wonders dreadfully what is that, and what is she holding. A smaller version of the Pair of Anguish. She smirks, sending chills down his spine. He wonders what is that small tool and what is she going to do with it. She hauntingly tells him that she is going to use it on him. She lovingly holds the torture device and tells him that she will put this inside of him. She turns the keys and says that she will use this thing on him. He profusely sweats and wonders where is she going to put it inside of him. He immediately looks at Yuruma and curses him. He yells that he will kill him right now. But suddenly Karen points the spear toward him. He begs for her to stop, but she keeps on it. He cries out that it hurts and tears fall down his cheeks. His chair falls on the ground with him in it. He cries in Karen's name. He yells that he is begging her to pull it out. She twists it instead and he screams in pain. She tells him to answer these 3 questions truthfully. She asks him why did he go out with her. He cries thinking that it hurts. A blurry memory came to his mind. Karen had called her and endearingly said that this fist kind of looks like him. He desperately questions why is he remembering that. He yells that it was because he felt like it. She twists the spear slightly, opening it. She says that it is question 2. She asks him why did he locked her up in this place. The only thing going through his head was that it all hurt. Then he remembers Karen asking him if he can show her his hand. She had smiled and said that his hand is pretty warm. He yelled that it was cause her body was so good. He asks if that is enough to let him go. Again he thinks why is he remembering this. She twists the spear more, opening it at the base. He screeches on the floor, all tied up as blood pulls around him. She says that it is the final question. She asks him did he ever, at any point, really loved her. Her eyes were blank as he screeched that there is no way he loved her, and calls her a meat toy. She opens the spear. He vomits from the intensity of the pain. Kren smiles as she says that from now on he will not be able to use it. She dips her hand in the liquid around him and says that lots of blood is coming out. She states that it is already over. She grabs the spear and puts it over her neck. She stabs herself as Shun and Yuga look at her in shock. Shun quickly holds her as blood gushes down her neck. Yuga sees all this with wide eyes. At first, he thought Karen was a strange girl. He remembers her handing over a copy of the classwork. He looked at her all confused, so she asked him if he did not want it. He thinks that he could have seriously beaten the shit out of her. Rather than that, he asked her if she was not scared of them. There were several jumbo-sized guys behind him. She replies that it is because it is her job as a class rep. She hands him over his work and says that people are not always who they seem to be. He looks at her as she gets back. Making her fall in love with him became his policy. The intimate time was exceptional, not only physically, but also emotionally. But he could not fall in love. It was only an act in order to convince her, only for her sake. He remembers her telling him that she loves him. I love you. That was the first time he had been told that. He thinks that is right, the truth is. Now he looks at the lifeless face of hers. He screams in agony, calling her name again and again as if that would wake her up. Suddenly a foot collided with his face. With a tear falling down his cheek, Shun asked him why is he getting all emotional, and he stated that he does not have the right to do that. He mutters something incoherent. He utters an apology to him, then succumbs to the pain. After that, he prays to the grave in which he buried Karen. His grandfather tells him that it is about time to do it. He walks to Yuga's corpse, which is hanging upside down over a tub. He grabs his head and makes a swift cut around his neck, letting the blood drip down his face onto the tub. His grandfather tells him to make sure to get it all out. He puts the corpse over his shoulders and comments that it has gotten pretty light. They walk to another area, where there is a bathtub situated in the middle. He dumps Yuga's corpse in that tub. Shun and his grandfather both cover their eyes with glasses. They pour liquid from the boxes nearby into the tub. Yuga's body slowly starts to evaporate. Later, Shun lets the blood out in the river, and his grandfather tells him to go back. He jogs to his grandfather and he says that it is already burning. He puts the skull in the burner along with the other bones. They smash the ashes till there is nothing left. And after that, they let it out in the river. His grandfather concludes that it is done. Something crinkles in Shun's pocket. He pulls out a piece of paper. His grandfather asks him what is that. Shun replies that he found it in that room. Keen-san's suicide note. His grandfather asks him if he is going to deliver it. Shun is silent at that. Karen addressed her dad and mom saying that she can't come back, and she told them not to come looking for her. She thanked them for everything. The letter falls down from her parents' hands as they read her name, Sakuraba Karen. Shun walks away from the scene of lamenting parents, but someone watches Yuruma. Hiro yells at the kid to apologize now. The kid only sniffles and Hiro says that he was making fun of him. The kid cries that he was not, but Hiro claims that he was. He claims that that is what he saw coming down here. The kid cries even more and says that he did not. Kuga calls out to Hiro with Kyo walking along with him. Kyo asks him what is he doing. Hiro claims that this kid was making fun of him, so he was about to teach him a lesson. He grabbed the kid's head and told him to lower his head more, but Kyo tells him to stop that. Hiro argues and asks why, stating that it was his fault. Kyo simply repeat for him to stop that. Hiro shivers and pushes the kid away. Kyo asks Kuga what now. Kuga asks in return if they want to talk about what happened. Hiro madly says that they should hurry and kill Yuruma. He tells them that he already got Senkuji and Ashiro, and who knows who will be next, so he suggests that they should kill the bastard. Kuga agrees and says that that's true. The sooner it is, the better it is for them to kill him. Hiro turns to Kyo and calls out to him. However, Kyo does not respond right away, and when he turns to him he childishly says that he does not want to. He says that he wants to see how this plays out. He states that it has been pretty interesting. Kuga follows behind Kyowu and tells him that it is as Kyowu says. Hiro hesitantly calls out to them to wait, but Kuga turns to him and tells him that he does not really like the idea of them being together. He asks Hiro if he is too scared of him. Hiro cliched his fists and curses multiple times. Later he finds a kid sitting in the park and comments that he looks like the kid from earlier. The kid looks at him in question. He suddenly grabs his jaw to hold his mouth open. He wonders what is going on and who is this person. Hiro slams the bottle in his hand down the boy's throat. The kid cries and wonders what is this, it is bitter. Then he reads the label on the bottle and dreadfully realizes that it is detergent. Hiro does not let up his hold, instead he yells that it is all his fault. He embarrassed him in front of Kyowu-chan. The boy makes gagging noses thinking who is he talking about. Hiro finally throws the bottle to the ground and leaves the boy to his devices foaming in the park. Hiro says out loud that he will get him and he will kill Yuruma. Later at the shoe locker, Chizuru looks at Shun as he pulls out a letter from his shoe locker. She dreadfully thinks that Shun has got a love letter. She wonders if could a rival have entered the stage, or did other people notice his charm. She exclaims in her mind that she did not think there were others. She curiously wonders who could the sender be. After that, she follows Shun to every corner of the school, and wondering about the person who sent the letter to Shun. Finally, she sees Shun pause on his way behind the gym and thinks what a cliché place to confess. Chizuru notices that she has come. She wonders who is that girl and realizes that it is her. The school Madonna, Shirakawa Kaname-san. She hears Kaname shyly tell Aruma that she wants him inside her. Aruma exclaims at that and Chizuru cries thinking that it is over for her. Kaname repeats again saying that she wants Shun to be her friend. Shun sighed in relief thinking that she meant friend. Chizuru also lets out a breath of relief, but Kaname continues that she saw him and asks him what was he sending to Sakuraba-san's house. Shun curses thinking that she knows her. She tells him that Sakuraba-san is missing right now. She asks if could it be that he was looking for Sakuraba-san alone like she thought. Shun realizes that she has got the wrong idea. He bows to her and says that he has no idea what she is talking about. He asks her how does she know about him. He asks her if they have met before. She flushes and says that this whole time she has been watching him. She densely repeats her. A guy appears behind her and says that she means to say she has liked him this whole time. He comments that Yuruman is pretty dense. He puts a hand on Kaname's shoulder as she flushes red. Shun is taken aback by what the guy called him and asks him who he is. The boy grinned and replied that he is Kaname's twin brother, Shirakawa-jun. He asked if Shun does not remember him. Suddenly his memory starts to clear up and he says that he remembers. He says that it is the Shirakawa siblings from elementary school. Jun throws him a peace sign. He comments that Jun has changed so much that he did not realize. Jun pats him on the shoulder and says that Yuruman has gotten pretty good looking himself. Shun asks him why is he calling him Yuruman. Jun asks why not and says that he is dating Kaname. Shun bluntly says that they are just friends and Kaname pushes Jun out of embarrassment. Jun comments what a pain. He tells Shun that as a guy and a girl, there's only one thing he has got to do, and throws his cousin onto Yuruma, making them both fall to the ground. That ends in Shun's hand on her chest in an effort to support her. But then he squeezes and immediately thinks about the volume. His mind again goes blank with his grandfather's head floating around. Chizuru appears to have a head of a demon for the moment. Shun immediately tenses thinking that he senses killing intent. Kaname gets up with a red face and apologizes to Shun. Shun also hastily returns the apology. She punches her brother who only laughs as she tells him to stop that and he is bothering Yuruma-kun. After that, taking his chance, Shun runs away yelling his apology at them. Behind them, Chizuru also huffs in relief, rubbing the sweat off of her face. At the hospital, Shun was sitting beside his brother. He puts the flower vase on the table. He thinks Senkuji and Ashiro were killed and now there are 3 left. He tells his little brother to just wait a little bit longer. Come to think of it, he remembers that those 2 moved halfway through elementary school. He knows that he was not close to them at the time. He knows that she saw the suicide note but he does not think it is a problem. But he has to focus. Later in the class, the student says that the time has finally come. The Mizaki School Festival. He says that a lot of people are going to come to the event, and they need first and second year students to have a booth for each class. He says that they will pick a committee from the boys and girls through a lottery. He slams a box on the desk. He says that it is handmade by a class representative. A girl asks Chizuru what would she do if she got picked. She replies that she is not sure. The boy pulls out the first ticket and says that it is Yuruma Shun-kun. Suddenly Shun wakes up from his nap on his desk and asks what is it. He trunks to his classmates and asks what happened. A guy comments that he fell asleep again. Chizuru thinks that Yuruma-kun is part of the committee. and she realizes that this could be her chance to take back the lead, and it could be the chance of a lifetime. The guy puts his hand on the lottery box and says that one more person. Chizuru is quietly glaring at him in the box of lottery. He pulls out the lottery and says that this person is Shirakawa Kaname-san. Chizuru cries, thinking that it is over for her. Kaname hesitantly says that Class 1A's play will be Romeo and Juliet. The entire class cheers as Shun quietly writes down what was decided. He looks at her thinking who would have thought Kaname-san would be on the committee with him, and even in the same class as him. The girl suddenly asks what about the cast. Shun wondered if he could work behind the scenes. A guy says that first, they need a Romeo and a Juliet. Chizuru immediately thinks with stars in her eyes that if Yuruma was Romeo, and if she was Juliet. The student yells that Yuruma and Shirakawa-san should be it. They both look at the class in shock. The guy asks if they are telling Yuruma to be with the class idol Shirakawa-san. He curses, asking if he is serious. The second boy suggests that they should all play a fair game of rock, paper, scissors. The third boy asks if he is stupid and says that no way that is happening. He suggests keeping the peace with the boys and just letting Yuruma play the role. Shun, who is listening to the whole conversation and thinks it is so harsh. The guy comments that it is the two of them. Chizuru simply puts her head on the desk, making her friend turn to her curiously. Shun looks at the crowd of his classmates in question. He wonders if it is really decided. Kaname looks calm on the outside, but she is cheering inside. Later, after the discussion, Shun is practicing the lines as he robotically speaks. What light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. The guy training him screams that he sucks, and another guy asks if he thinks he can be Shirakawa-san's partner like that. On the other side, Chizuru mercilessly says that he is filthy, that Romeo Montague. She tells Juliet to stay away from him. Kaname, who is playing the role of Juliet, says that she will not. She says that she is going to marry him. Chizuru yells, stating that that's enough and to stay away from him. She tells her to get out. Kaname also plays the role and agrees. The guy on the sidelines suggests let's have Azuma-san play the wife. The girl beside him says that the script does not have any of those lines. Shun utters another wrong dialogue and his classmates yells that he told him that that's all wrong. Later he walks towards his home, cursing that he has been busy every day. He thinks that the class festival is almost here and he just has to put up with it a little longer. He still has not decided on his next target after Ashiro. Suddenly he is face to face with Hiro, who greets her with the same cackled expression. Hiro immediately starts and says that compared to him, he is way better. He points his finger at Shun and tells him to consider this a declaration of war. The girls behind him wonder out loud what is going on. Shun repeats what Shiro just said about a declaration of war, and Hiro stomps his foot, saying that he is looking forward to this battle all for Kyoho-chan. He yells that he will make Shun suffer a painful death just like his family. Suddenly Shun's expression turns deadly, which makes Hiro flinch. But suddenly Kaname calls out to Shun. Hiro immediately recognizes her and thinks that this girl is Shirakawa Kaname. She asks him what is wrong, but Hiro took a run for it as if his life depended on it. She steps closer to Shun and says that they were in elementary school with him, Madoka-kun. Shun agrees with her. At his home, Hiro is furiously getting off from Kaname's memory. He wonders why and thinks that Kaname is hot, and Yuruma is going to get beaten up for this. He thinks that Yuruma is on good terms with Shirakawa. He furiously thinks as if he has the same status as her. The student scratches his head, muttering out loud that the lines for Romeo and Juliet are so long that the girl beside him says that these lines are difficult, as she was holding the script as well. Sayama Moan from the drama club tells them that next up is the dance scene, which is Kaname and Yuruma-kun's kiss scene. The entire class gazes at her while Chizuru dreadfully gazes at her. The guys asks if they are really gonna do it. Moan laughs and waves them off, saying that there is no way and they are just going to pretend. Chizuru again huffs in relief in the corner. Then they start practicing. Shun and Kaname both join their hands together as Kaname asks him if he is ready, and Shun starts his lines and says that then, dear saint, let lips do what hands do, they pray, grant thou, lest faith turn to despair. Kaname says after him that saints do not move, though grant for prayer's sake. Shun says then move not, while his prayer's effect he takes. Then they both looks at each other, slowly closing their gaps. The audience is practically dying in the background at this point as they come closer. And then suddenly Moan yells that it is okay, saying that it is close enough. She tells them to remember that distance. Chizuru once is again sighing in relief in the back, almost looking like a ghost. Moan starts to order around, telling everyone to break it up and go back to work. And she tells Shun to go practice on his own. He agrees and says that he is going to the restroom. In the restroom he looks at his reflection, knowing he is getting impatient. He thinks that he does not have time for this, and of those three Madoka is next. But he does not have time to prepare. He wonders what he should do. Later, when he is practicing his lines, Jun approaches him with his mischievous grin. He is in traditional clothes. Shun calls him formally, but he tells Shun that Jun is fine. He asks him where is Kanem. Shun says that she was just here a second ago. He looks around him and finds that she is not in the class. Jun exclaims that here he came all this way to show her his happy coat. Then he slowly says that if it is only Yuruman here, he guesses this is fine. Shun looks at him in question as Jun turns to him and tells him to take care Kanem. Shun looks even more confused, but Jun states that Kanem is serious about him. He says that he does not know exactly how he feels about her, so he tells Shun to just give it some serious thought. He trunks to leave, but he gives Shun one last look and says that if he were to make Kanem cry, who knows what could happen. Then he leaves. Shun is left to see his leaving footsteps, and behind the next door, Kanem appears with a box in her hand as she asks him if it is just him. He replies that it is true. He says that it looks like everyone else went home. He asks her where did she go. She replies that she went to the staff room. After the small chit-chat, she shyly suggests if they should start the practice. The scripted papers fluttered in his hands. They join their hands again as they repeat the lines. Shun says that dear saint they pray, grant thou, lest faith turn to despair. Let lips do what hands do. She continues and says saints do not move, though grant for prayer's sake. Shun replies then move not. He says that while his prayers effect he take. Both of them pause after that and close their distance as well as this eyes. She continues to advance with her eyes closed. Shun in a daze thinks this is closer than before. He thinks that they are practicing the kiss scene, but he thinks that they are too close. He quickly pouches her off by grabbing her shoulders and straightening his arms. He apologizes to her as she shyly turns around as she too apologizes to him. She tells him that she is serious about Yuruma-kun. He curiously asks her why him. She pauses and tells him that back in elementary school, she was also bullied by those 5 people. He looks at her in shock. Hiro shook the bottle in front of her and told her to drink up dirt juice. She smashed the bottle to the ground, but he told others to hold her to the ground. Later they yell that she threw up. She says that as for why she was targeted by them, she states that she does not know. After that, as Shun had approached her with umbrella in his hands, he asked her what is wrong. He leans his umbrella over her and says that she will catch a cold. Later they smile saying that rain stopped. She tells him that that was when she met him, and to her, he was her light. She tells him that he was her first love, but soon after, they changed their target to him. From her to him. She tells him that she transferred schools not long after. She says that she could not save him. This whole time, she has been thinking of how she could make it up to him. She cries and apologizes to him saying that even if this is such a late apology, he tells her that this is not her fault. But she says that there is one thing she wants him to know. She tells him that she really like him. This whole time all along she has liked him. She blushes deep red and he tries to say something, but she tells him that when the sports festival is over, wants to hear his feelings. After that she turns around and leaves. He suddenly remembers what Junod told her about taking care of Kanem. Shun looks up and desperately wonders what is he going to do. He thinks that for such a beautiful girl to like him, he wonders how can he deal with this. He robotically walks out of the class and thinks that he can't go and ask Gramps. He does not notice a very distressed-looking Chizuru glaring daggers behind him. Later at the Sakuraba household, Ansel Zenishi says that this letter was mailed to them. He is holding his notepad and a pen in his hands. Karen's mother says that he is right and says that there is no doubt that this handwriting is Karen's. The detective laughs as he pulls out a photo of Shun from his pocket and asks if she recognizes this kid from somewhere. Her mother tells him that she has not seen him. Reaching the car, he says that he got no leads once again. Uda Asako looks at him in question. He says that he wonders if he thinks that he is on the side of justice. Uda Asako mildly annoyed as she thinks that he is muttering something to himself again. He turns once again and says that he will teach him real justice, and thus the police are on the move. Hiro exclaims that that is the plan and it is all fair and square. He says that they are going to take Yuruma down. Kyo hums and says that his is not bad coming from him. After that, Hiro cheers like a madman and dances around Kyo. Exclaims that Kyo-chan praised him. He grabs his cheeks and says that finally tomorrow is the day. The girl in Shun's class claps her hand and suggests making tomorrow a great success to everyone. The entire class cheers after her. The students clap. A Sagai cries telling Shun that he did a good job, and another pats him on the head. Shun smiles back and thanks him. Later that night, as Shun walks home, he thinks that it is already night. He thinks that it has been like this every day lately, but that ends tomorrow. He continues to walk, but suddenly he turns around, exclaims that he senses killing intent. He turns around to find his attacker, but he only finds a very desperate-looking Chizuru who seems to be crying angrily. Chidera replies and says that she is also waiting for one. Then Shun suddenly realizes that she heard that. He tries to explain it to her, but suddenly an arm is wrapped around his neck as Jun suggests that they walk home together. Then he quickly greets Chizuru and Shun realizes that Kaname is also there when she bids Chizuru a good evening.